Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action, and yes, that is in fact a War Boss on a Manticore. Yeah, I don't take the War Boss super often, he's not that great of a character, but he recently got a bit of a buff, so I figured I would take him out for a spin. Let's see what he's got. He's got Potion of Strength here, of course, has also been buffed. Makes his weapon strength quite a bit higher. He's got Opal Amulet also for a ward save, and wow, of course, we're going to be up against the Tomb Kings, and I wanted to talk about a couple units here that are, in my opinion, underrated, and just kind of more of a meta concept about how to think about units that you might think are bad. A lot of the time you might use a unit and not be successful with it, and just think that it's a bad unit, when in fact you may just not be using it correctly, or, you know, may not just be looking at the appropriate stats when thinking about how you should use it, right? And I find that people often consider, myself being one of them, that Borcav for the Greenskins is pretty terrible. That is true to an extent. They do have generally very bad attack and defense, and even their weapon strength is really not great, especially for a Greenskins unit. Most of their infantry units have higher weapon strength. But you think about one thing, right? They do have an okay charge bonus. Then you consider there are Savage variants who have this Frenzy buff, right? So potentially they have a very good charge bonus. You can see with that Frenzy active, they're up to 60. They've got a bit of physical resistance as well. And yeah, pretty good stuff. Of course, Wa can stack with that charge bonus to make it even higher. And to that effect, the Savage Orc Boy Biggins come in with an even higher base charge and a bit of anti-large. They hit a bit harder, 25% physical resistance. So yeah, we're going to try and see how that would do. Previously, I had been using these guys, or other similar types of Borcav, and not having much success, because I was using them more as melee cavalry, but you look, it actually says Shock Cavalry right here on the tooltip, right? So let's try and use them with that charge bonus in mind, and see how we do. Meanwhile, the rest of the force, we've got the 8-peak loons, Orc Shaman here, Warlords boys, Orc Error boys, and yeah, Gobbo's getting pounded by double Casket of Souls, one of them being Grand Hierophant Kotip, of course, but now the Wa has been popped. We're going to charge in on this flank. You can see up to 71 charge bonus on these just regular Savage Orc Air Boys. Keep in mind, this is a unit that costs 750 points, right? So this is basically like a Knight Errant, more or less. And they come in here and wreck this unit of Ushabti. I mean, granted, the War Boss is also in with the Potion of Strength active. Probably a little bit of a mistake to use it here, but 705 total weapon strength. Dutch Skink tries to react with the net, which was decently well placed, but unfortunately only caught the one unit there. Neakaro Horseman, though, trading very efficiently into those Orc Boys, a great unit in this matchup. Meanwhile, over here, these Savage Orc Boys getting good charge, and then we're going to pull them away, right? They're Shock Cavalry. Think of them like knights, more or less. You got to pull them out, cycle charge them back in. You can see Dutch Skink comes in with a counter charge on the Ushabti just a little bit late. They're going to pound those goblins. But meanwhile, I'm just getting dunked on super hard by Kotep and this Casket of Souls while I'm trying to break these various units. I don't really want to necessarily just dive in and get swarmed here, but I make a little bit of a mistake, leave my War Boss in combat for too long, and he does get surrounded by Ushabti here, so that's not great. But we do have the Shaman in the back. He can continue to provide some magic. We're throwing out like Fists of Gork and, you know, whatever other spells we can. Goblins, I'm not expecting to hold out for too long. The 8-peak loons being unbreakable, so they'll hold out for quite a while. But Warlords boys doing reasonably well over here. You can see these Neakar horsemen just continuing to hold up these Savage Orc War boys on that flank. So far, not looking good, honestly. The balance of power is pretty far out of favor, and we're about to get the Ushabti summon as well, just as if it wasn't enough right in this front line, right on top of my Savage Orc Biggins on the boars, of course. But now we've got this Orc Shaman into combat. Oh man, those hits too from the casket, unfortunately landing in exactly the same place, not doing quite as much damage. But these Ushabti here, I brought my Mangy Marauders up as kind of a reserve. Now that we've dealt with a lot of the mobile threats, I can come in and get consistent focus fire on those Ushabti. And likewise, the War Boss was able to extricate himself. He's going to get down here on the ground, get an attack or two in, but very nicely done by that Light Wizard there. Light Wizard plus Kotep, so getting a ton of Winds of Magic, and I believe he does have a pretty heavy spell loadout as well, so that Shem's Burning Gaze there does a little bit of damage. I'm not the biggest fan of Shem's Burning Gaze, was a pretty nice little shot from the caster, certainly, but yeah, I'm starting to push forward, not feeling too good about my chances, but honestly, I think this balance of power is inflated quite a bit by this Ushabti summon and the fact that these two caskets are still alive and have so much ammo, right? And the War Boss also being low on health does play into that balance of power as well, so we're going to bring him in, get a few charges, and again, just keep trying cycle charging as much as we can. Try and keep that charge bonus active. Again, pulling away these Savage Orc Boar Boys here, I've been able to keep these two online more or less the entire time, and been able to just countercharge those various Ushabti units. In the back here, this casket, one with Katep on it, is now going to be the subject of attacks, but looks like some Ushabti tried to come bail him out. Oh man, he's just all sad, getting arrows in his face too. Oh man, so good. The Savage Orcs just taking it to him, but there's still these Tomb Guard left. These two Tomb Guard with halberds can get in, get some good damage, and the Orc Boars obviously won't want to fight them, right? So I need to stay mobile as much as I can. But balance power started to turn back in my favor. We managed to claw our way back, using those mobile cav units as intended. The shock cavalry, right? Keep that tooltip in mind, and keep in mind, guys, that this thing right here can be a little bit misleading sometimes. Sometimes you don't exactly understand what it is, but just keep that in mind. Shock cavalry is especially one that I see people make a lot of mistakes with. Like, you need to treat shock cavalry and melee cavalry differently, because they are very different, right? Like, melee cavalry, stuff like, you know, questing knights, obviously the Nekar horsemen, the sword and shield variants of Black Knights and Chaos Knights, obviously, those are melee cav, right? You're meant to use them more as like a mobile reserve, plug a gap, maybe leave them in sustained combat somewhere for a while, whereas shock cavalry, very much, you want to charge in, leave them for maybe 7 to 10 seconds, depending on what they're fighting, maybe up to like 15 seconds, so they can really get all their attack animations in and then pull out. Because with that charge bonus, I mean, that's the value here, right? We can talk a little bit more about charge bonus later, but Mange Marauders charging in, they're pretty much out of ammo, so nothing to do but charge these Tomb Guard and hold them in place so that the air boys can keep shooting. These Savage Orc Boar Boys cleaning up the last of the units up on top of the hill, and that should pretty much be army losses. These Skeleton Horsemen Archers, the last unit to go. Dutch Skink did a great job keeping them out of harm's way, but unfortunately, they can't contribute much without any fighting power or without any leadership. So, well played to Dutch Skink, very fun game. For myself, I'm definitely impressed by these Savage Orc Boar Boys and Biggins. I think I needed to do a bit more testing with them. Whoops, we'll talk about that more in just a little bit. As for Dutch Skink's side, people were recently complaining about the caskets being nerfed. I mean, 152 kills, 102 kills, they still did a ton of work. My archer line almost got completely shut down there. Like, they got some fire in on some targets, but it really wasn't anything too impactful. And, yeah, I mean, 2 I think is too much. I do think, especially bringing Katep, as meme as it is, I mean, don't get me wrong, if you want a meme, go for it. But it's just risky to have him on the Casket of Souls because it's slow, right? It's slow to move around. It has that, like, weird Roomba attack animation, which can make it hard to kill sometimes. But it's just makes your Lord very vulnerable, and you can get caught out in a lot of situations. Granted, having at least one for the damage and for the magic regen is really nice, so I would say you would take Katep. If you want to take Katep, take him on the chariot, or take another Lord, and then just bring the casket separately. And that way you're not over-investing so much. Like, for Dutch Skink here, if you were to trade Katep out for another Lord, and I would also probably cut this Light Priest as well, or at least cut his kit down a little bit. For me, just generally when I'm taking 2 casters, I only take just a couple things on both of them. And one thing to note about Lore of Light, in particular for the Tomb Kings, just one quick note here. Yeah. The Lore of Light, lore attribute, is useless for the Tomb Kings, basically, because it gives immune to psychology, and of course, being undead, they don't have psychology, right? So, I mean, unless you have... yeah, I guess there's no one that's immune to psychology in their army. So I would pretty much always cut that. The Curse of Kassar as well. I mean, the fact that he needs to be below half health to get this to go off, and then you have to remember to use it. And I mean, it's good. Minus 60 armor is pretty good, but you only get a one-time use. I'd probably cut that as well. As I mentioned, Shem's Burning Gaze I'm not the biggest fan of. Net of Ammontok can be pretty good here, but I mean, if you're going for a defensive artillery style, I can definitely see some merit in going in that direction. So maybe we'll hold that, keep that one rather, but it's very risky to overcast. I think overcasting Nets of Ammontok for 18 Winds of Magic, I really don't think this is worth it at all. I think you only ever want to single cast Nets of Ammontok, even with a high level caster. We're talking somebody like Mazdamundi or Teclis are the only two. I guess you have the Light Slan as well with Greater Arcane Conduit. Even with them, you really don't want to be overcasting nets. It's just not magic efficient at all. It's something that I've been messing around with recently and trying it in some different games, and I mean, you can get some good situations with it, but it's really, really cost inefficient. So I would probably leave that one at home and just take Fa's Protection and Barona's Time Warp, and then the item that he had this here, Nefara's Scroll of Mighty Incantations. It's extra Winds of Magic, and more importantly, Power Reserve, which is the most important. You don't really want to worry about recharge rate too much. Power Reserves, though, if any ability has that, you always want that, pretty much. So we'll start there, and let's go ahead and get... Maybe we could get Kalita. Be kind of fun. You could get Kotep. If you're going to go double caster, I would say Kotep's a good choice because he has Arcane Conduit as well, so you can kind of get some synergy there. This curse, since you don't have to use it and it actually does damage, I would always keep the Restless Deadlore attribute since it gives you healing. And it actually can resurrect unit models as well, so very, very unique in that way. Of course, Incantation of Cursed Blades and Protection are pretty much auto picks. Against the Greenskins as well, might consider taking Skullstorm for the meme factor. And of course, against the Greenskins specifically, Kotep is a really good pick because of this Lich Staff. You can cast a spell and shut down Wa immediately. So I would definitely take that against the Greenskins, probably take Kotep in a setup like this. We'll take the Casket separately. And one other thing I did mention to Dutch Skink about his build is the Tombs. He did lack any form of terror, which is a mistake against the Greenskins, definitely being weak to terror, but just match in one Tomb Scorpion there, and then we'll come in and grab some Skeleton Warriors. 2 or 3 Nehekar Horsemen, maybe even more. Yeah, let's go for 4 Nehekar Horsemen, or you know what, we'll just take 3. Still need some other supporting options. He had the Tomb Guard with Halberds, who, I mean, they do decently enough, but I'm actually going to come in here and grab the Kepper Guard. I used to not be that big of a fan of these guys, but specifically against Savage Orcs, they're really good because of that anti-infantry, high weapon strength, plus the magic attacks. They just cut them to ribbons, right? And the regeneration helps them hold up from getting punched back too hard, plus, you know, like good melee defense. So I would probably take the Kepper Guard here, and then for the rest of the points, you could come in, maybe allocate some Carrion, maybe Light Cav. You definitely need some form of Light Cav. I mean, we have the Nehekar Horsemen already, but we could get even just some Skeleton Horsemen also, because they cause fear, relatively fast moving, have Vanguard. You can use them to chase routing Greenskin units, which you can bet there will be many, of course, as there were in that battle. So yeah, that's that. As for the underrated Greenskins units, kind of the highlight topic of this video, let's just quickly get back there. Just a moment. So the boars, I definitely need to do some more testing with them, but I wanted to mention, I think the ideal use case for them is actually to bring them with Wurzag. I was just kind of testing the war boss in that matchup. I think he's okay. Needs some more looking at, but the Wurzag with these boars I think is potentially really promising. Again, power recharge rate we don't need, so we'll cut that. War paint we keep. Wurzag's Revenge I actually usually cut. Weirdly enough, I think I need to do some testing, but based on some things I've seen and some people I've talked to, the miscast, map-wide miscast chance effects aren't actually worth it. So I might cut that. Get Pack here you want to keep because of leadership for Greenskins, and of course the other two are essential, the and the FG to get. But the real thing for the boars here is the Bonewood Staff, right? That plus 12 melee attack plus 18% charge bonus map wide. Means that as you spam these cheap spells here, I personally usually run a Brain Bursta for the damage, as you guys saw there for my Shaman, and then Fists of Gork also, magic damage and extra stats. It's very, very strong. Potentially, as you're spamming these two cheap spells, you can get a ton of extra stats, specifically, you know, charge bonus and melee attack, which synergizes well into these guys' focus, right? Being shock cavalry, with so many units of them, it can be very, very overwhelming, potentially. So a core like this, and then I would kind of come in and build around it, depending on which faction I was fighting. But yeah, definitely needs some more looking at. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, but I'm planning on having some fun with some builds like this in the near future, so stay tuned for that. Be sure to like and subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you very much for watching. Yeah, we'll see you next time.